Try that now, Joe.
Sounds the same.
Uh,
Josh, Gene's
Yep.
complaining about volume issues.
Oh, I heard you just fine, Gene.
yeah, it's unmuted, but I'm not getting this way. I'm not getting the volume.
You're not- you're not
is there
hearing
a
us well?
volume control on your keyboard, Gene?
The F3 button on my keyboard.
Yeah, what device are you on, Gene? Are you on an iPad, a phone, a laptop?
I think I wonder if he's on phone.
He's not showing anymore.
Yeah.
Try that.
You sound fine.
There it is. I've got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great.
No picture, Gene.
I'm going to work on that right now.
One thing at a time.
Yeah. Well, since it's
Working on it.
6:30, Gene, you think you're ready to go?
Yeah.
Rob, you good?
Absolutely.
Okay. It is 6:30, August 28th, 2024, and the Nahant Board of Selectmen meeting is now in session. As usual, we have some opening comments, which I will announce right now. Hazardous waste collection days, Saturday, August 31st, that's this Saturday, and Saturday, October 12th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Lynn DPW. Certain fees apply. For a list of accepted material costs and more, visit the community calendar at nahant.org for more information. Metal, white goods, TVs, computers, etc. recycling is the last Saturday of each month, which is this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. noon behind the DPW garage. Resident parking sticker is required. Certain fees may apply. Visit nahant.org for a full list of accepted material. Compost area is open on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. A 2024 resident sticker is required. Visit the Public Works page at nahant.org for a full list of accepted materials. Just as a reminder, no dogs on beaches, May 1st through September 30th, except on Doggy Beach. Parking stickers are still available. 2024 resident parking stickers are available for purchase at nahant.org. Stickers are $10 each. All outstanding bills must be paid to the town and census completed before purchasing. Nahant Market by the Sea. There's one more market remaining. The last market of the season is September 14th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Flash Road Park. To become a vendor, visit the market page at nahant.org for an application. Also, importantly, the short-term rental rules and regulations public comment period ends September 6th. So that's coming up. Send all comments to ktaylor@nahant.org. There will be a flu shot clinic at Town Hall on September 25th, 2024. There'll be a high dose clinic for people 65 years and older from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and a regular dose clinic for people 18 years and older from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's open to Nahant residents and employees only. You must register as there is limited walk-in availability. Visit the community calendar at nahant.org for more information. That's all we have for opening comments. Gene or Rob, is there anything you'd like to add?
Nothing from me, Josh.
Yeah, just something I noticed today in the well, we've all been seeing it in the newspaper, and today a couple of Facebook accounts of ditches being dredged in other towns, and I know we have a schedule that we do the dredging on, Tony. Is that something we should be concerned about with this mosquito breakout?
I was going to talk a little bit about the mosquito stuff later on. I can talk about it now if you'd like. There's two different outbreaks, I guess you would say, happening in Massachusetts right now. One is Tripoli and one is West Nile. Neither are in our current area at the moment, which is a good thing. The West Nile is really in the Cambridge, Everett, Medford, Newton, Somerville, Watertown, Brookline, Milton, and Quincy area, while the Triple E is actually more out, is in Carver, Halifax, Kingston, Middleborough, Plymouth, Plimpton, Rochester, Wareham, Douglas, Dudley, Oxford, Sutton, and Uxbridge. So, we're not in a critical area at the moment. And that might be, there could be a number of different reasons, but as far as the ditch cleaning goes and our work with Essex County mosquito control annual basis, and we're,
Tony, your signal is breaking up.
Okay, it's Tony. I was wondering if it was mine, so.
gonna
Yeah, Tony, I don't know if you can hear us, but you appear frozen to me. Well,
That's no different here.
yeah, so he's still frozen for Eugene as well?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I can fill the time with a little bit I do know, which is that typically Essex Mosquito Control dredges the ditches in the winter in the hopes that the ground is frozen. It makes their equipment easier to get through those boggy areas. I don't know if that's the plan for this year, but that's typical. Another thing that to remind people of is that, when you look at the ditch and the water isn't flowing, for the water to flow, it requires a differential in height of the water plane at one end or the other. So if it's just reflecting the groundwater level, it's not going to move one way or the other. If, for example, we turn the pumps on at Bear Pond and suck Bear Pond down, it would flow that way. But when the water level is at equilibrium at both ends of the ditches, it doesn't flow. So that should not necessarily be a surprise to people to see stagnant water there.
Are you a bioengineer? That's pretty good description.
Is Tony back with us? I just saw him,
Okay.
but I don't see him now.
This way. All right, well, so he did say he was going to come back to that topic, Gene. So let's see if we can keep going. We do have a joint meeting with the planning board. So we need to open that joint meeting. Do we have Rob or Gene, do you want to offer up a meeting to open that joint meeting?
Josh, that's not tonight. I think this is just a notice of the upcoming meeting.
I don't think so, Dan.
This is not a joint meeting.
We had on the agenda a joint meeting to discuss extending the deadline for the alternate member applications. Is that not right?
Yeah, it's limited to just extending the application date.
Yeah, there were a couple other topics and Sheila's nodding yes, so that's a good sign. I don't see many planning board members on here,
Right.
but we can give it a try. Sheila, do you want to, are you able to unmute yourself and chime in?
I think I am unmuted.
You are.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I do know Rebecca Flacca is not able to attend tonight, and I did send out reminders to everyone on the planning board that we were just voting to extend, the alternate members' application deadline. So I'm
Okay.
hoping everybody will chime in.
Well, I'm seeing only you, Sheila, and I see Michelle Capano and Shannon. So
Okay.
that's three.
This is
Casey.
Casey,
Or
Casey
Casey.
Carey is here.
okay,
So
there's
that's
four.
four. Is that a quorum, Sheila?
Yes, that's a quorum.
And in that case, would you like to proceed?
Yes, I would like to open our joint meeting of the planning board. Do roll call
So
vote.
moved.
Bianchi.
Aye.
I have Michelle Capano,
Aye.
Casey Carey,
Aye.
and Rob Steinberg. Okay, Steve Viviano. And Sheila Hambleton, here.
Okay, so that's a quorum for the planning board, right?
Yes. Can
right.
I ask though, Rob Steinberg's our secretary? Can I please ask for Shannon Bianchi to step up and be secretary for tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, and the Board of Selectmen will have a similar motion to open a joint meeting.
Josh, I move to open the joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board.
Seconded.
Okay, discussion. Sheila, would you like to lead the discussion?
Yes,
This is a planning board request.
yes, this is in light of, we are not needing to jointly appoint a member, and we had originally set a deadline for I think it was August the 14th. So we're asking for the deadline to be extended to September the 5th.
Sheila, can I just take a second here? Josh, did we vote
Yep.
on our motion
Oh.
to?
I'm sorry, we didn't. So roll call vote on opening the joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibbo, aye.
Josh Envermeyer. Okay, we now have a joint meeting going.
Okay, sorry. I don't need to repeat that though, do I?
No.
you don't.
No. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, so in a nutshell, the planning board would like to extend the deadline for submitting letters of interest to serving as an alternate member of the planning board to September 5th, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any? I guess we need a motion on that too. Do we have a
So it'll
motion?
be a joint motion.
Well, I see our next motion as, well, let me make it. I move that the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board vote to extend the submission deadline for Planning Board alternate member applications to September 5th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, discussion. I don't think there's much discussion beyond what Sheila just said. The original date was August 14th. We'll appoint, we plan to appoint a alternate member on September 18th. And so the request is that interested parties email shambleton@nahant.org and ktaylor@nahant.org. I guess
Josh,
yep.
can we get a vote on that last motion?
Yep, so that was the discussion on that motion. Any more discussion on extending?
Yeah, it's just, I happened to pick up on one of the letters. Jeff Lewis, he's showing an Andover address. Does that matter whether he's listed as a resident of the town or elsewhere?
I didn't notice that. I thought Jeff lived in town. I'm gonna.
Yeah, he does live in town.
He does.
Yes.
Possibly an old resume.
Yeah, Ellsworth,
Ellsworth Road, correct? Yep.
okay?
Yeah,
He
and
does
Jeff
officially.
has served on a few different committees. Well, I
Yeah.
guess he served on FinCom, and he's
Yeah,
helped out with the fee schedule that we'll be voting on today. Yeah, so Jeff apparently does live in town. I guess to further the discussion, it's the planning board's alternate member, so if they wish to extend the deadline, I certainly support that. Any other discussion from the Board of Selectmen? Or anyone, I guess?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. This is Shannon. I just had a quick question for my chairwoman, Madam Chairwoman. Is that email correct? What is it? Something or other at Nahant. Isn't that like your assessor's email? Is there an update that we need to make to the motion with that email address?
I don't think so for the motion, no.
Okay. All right. That's cool.
No.
Never mind. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion from the selectmen on our motion? All right, hearing and seeing none, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Timo, aye.
Josh and from I.
And I'll take it over for the planning board. And so it's the same motion that Josh just read. So I have a vote, roll call vote. And so Shannon Bianchi,
Aye.
Michelle Capano,
Aye.
Casey Carey.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. I saw a message, but didn't get to it. Just in case, Rebecca Flacca did come on. No. Rob Steinberg. Okay. Steve Viviano. And Sheila Hambleton, aye. Thank you.
Okay, and
What
then
a document.
I'm also seeing on the agenda discussion regarding public right of ways and next steps and discussions with KP Law regarding I think it means accessory or Affordable Homes Act, ADUs and other section and next steps. Is the planning board prepared to discuss that?
Honestly, I did not know that that was on your agenda for this evening. I do apologize, and I did not
Okay.
post anything to discuss those items.
Okay,
Apologize. But
All
if you
right.
had any questions in between, I'll stay on for a little bit, but it would only be me as the chairperson but not,
yeah,
we haven't
I
really
see-
discussed it all.
I see that
Yeah,
Tony just
okay.
unmuted.
I guess, okay, good. I guess I'd just say, we've been, Madam Chairman, we've been talking about, public rights of ways and, efforts to open those up legally and mark them, etc. There's likely a planning board role in that process. And, so, that was the foundation of adding this agenda item. So you can ponder that between now and in the next joint meeting, maybe.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will say that Tony and I have had some communication back and forth about the rights of ways and perhaps what I'll call the easiest ones to address in order to make some near-term progress. And then the discussion, I think, is Jeff Blake on the call?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I am.
Oh, there he is.
Shannon, do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just about the public rights of ways.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be on the same page with you guys. From the way that I've looked at it, I've looked at some really beautiful color bound preambulations and stuff from many years ago. And I've kind of dipped into who has responsibility and in a way, like who has the football with this. And from my analysis, I think it's a Board of Selectmen issue. I think the planning board was involved at one time, but it was kind of like the selectmen said, "Hey, planning board, could you help us with this?" And they did. But I think, for folks wanting to know who officially has the football here, it's the selectmen. Do you agree with that?
To be honest, I don't know the answer. I guess I'm happy to grab the football.
Nice.
It's been as you know, it's been lingering for a long time, and we've been trying to make some progress. We've made some progress. Some of these rights of ways are complex. Like in particular, the one that's been discussed frequently is the one at the very end of Little Nahant Road, and there's some legal issues there. But I think there are some, let's call it low-hanging fruit, rights of ways that are in less dispute. And I think we should well, what I'd like to do is get those ones squared away, get them marked, get them on a map, get that map onto the Nahant.org website. So Tony and I had some back and forth just this afternoon, in fact, about ones that we think are on the easier side of the spectrum. And, my feeling is let's make some progress on the easy ones, continue to, work on the hard ones, like the one at the end of Little Nahant Road, but let's not let that one prohibit progress on the others. And, one thing we mentioned at a meeting a few weeks or a couple months ago, I can't remember, I guess maybe it was just the last meeting, but is possibly forming a committee. Because I think one of the challenges with this is, everybody gets busy. And maybe if there was a committee that had one charge, which is attempting to address the public rights of ways, that might help us make progress. Anyway, those are my initial thoughts. We can work with Tony and see what we can do, but Tony and I will continue our efforts on at least going after the easy ones, and maybe at the next joint meeting we can discuss whether the planning board wants a role in that or not. Either way is fine with me. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, that's cool. I mean, I would just really encourage you guys to reach out to Sheila, Madam Chairwoman. What's the status of those preambulation binders being put on the town website? Because I think this is like hand in hand. It's so important that people get to see those preambulation binders, full color. Everything's perfect in them. There's even like pictures of folks standing at the right of ways. Photographed back in like 2000, what is it, 7 or 8, and then again in 2001 or something like that. Madam Chairman, could you chime in on that for me? Help me with this.
Sure, Shannon. And thank you, Josh.
Hey, Sheila,
I did.
Sheila, it's Gene. Josh,
Gene.
I'm gonna jump. I'll be back in about 20 minutes.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Gene has a commitment. He's got to address. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right. I happened to find, which I promised the planning board to find, some of my records, and I found a 2004 and a 2007 perambulation packet booklet that we actually produced. I had mentioned that books went to the library, went to the Board of Selectmen, and then the planning board, maintained a book, but I had one for myself also. Each member had a book. I scanned the 2004 and the 2007, and I did ask Kristen if she could put it onto the website. So it could be on the planning board's webpage. So I'm hoping she was able to do that, but if she hasn't done it yet, she will do it. Okay, she will do it, by the end of this week, I'm hoping. Okay, so that everybody can at least look at it. Okay.
Yeah, I think Dan Script told us at the last time we discussed it that the perambulation doesn't really have any legal teeth, so to speak.
Right.
Fun event, but it doesn't, my understanding was that it doesn't mean that one way or the other on the rights of way legally. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, perambulation is a colonial statute, just like our, the borders in terms of where the water comes up on high tide versus low tide. It's really a colonial statute that was really developed back when our borders were basically rock walls. That is obviously not the case anymore. So I think it's more of a bow to the colonial times. Has no real legal significance currently.
If I could just offer just another aspect of this, Mr. Chairman, the Women's Club and the Historical Society are really interested in this. It's been kind of something that's been really cool for participation, grassroots kind of participation, and defining our boundaries and defining what these rights of ways are. And the booklets are really just kind of like a great collection of plots, maps, things like that I think, would be really beneficial for folks to look at. It might not be necessarily bound by legalities, although it is still, current law that, people have to perform perambulations every 5 years or 7 years or whatever it is. But not like people do, but the Women's Club was really active with this, and they dress up and they used to walk around. It was a big deal. And I think the Historical Society coming up with their birthday next year, maybe they could play a role with this too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a fun event. It's an interesting event, but in addition to that, we'll need to do the title searches and the surveys and all that stuff that sort of on the legal side of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for entertaining my questions.
Sure.
Josh, it's Michelle Capano. I had a question for Dan. Or maybe you can answer this question. Have we, to the best of my knowledge, we have not turned over any rights of ways to a property owner. Is that correct? All the rights of ways that are in existence today are still in effect. The reason I asked this question is because we publish information on our town website, and there's a right of way that was sold to a resident and now it's their private property. We're putting the resident at risk because someone may look at that and say, oh, it's a public right of way. I should go check it out. I would just be cautious if we publish information that we haven't vetted.
I can speak to that, Josh.
Okay, yeah.
We did sell only a small portion of a piece of a right of way, 2 places, one Antigua Way and another one Bayview Avenue.
Those were both pretty recently, right? In the last few years.
Yeah, so people can still pass down those rights of ways. It was just a small portion where some steps, a couple of steps were in the street.
So those are no longer rights of way, Sheila? Is that correct?
Not those portions. No, they were deeded, and Dan can talk to that.
Yeah, Sheila, they weren't rights of ways as much as they were roads, which are basically nothing more than fancy easements. The rights of ways I think Michelle and Shannon are talking about are the ones that you can see on your assessor maps, leading down to some form of water or a rockway. But you're right, we did sell those off after going through the town-owned land study committee. But those aren't the rights of ways I think that are at the nature of this discussion. But yeah, you're right. We did sell those off after we went through the process, but they're not the same thing.
But Dan, roads are rights of ways.
They're easements. But that's not, when we talk about the rights of ways on this.
No, these aren't easements. I do have easements in certain areas of town, different. And yes, there's sewer, there's water, but there are others that are actually just rights of ways whether they're old range roads, the way the town was split up in ranges. So that's a lot of them, partly. But
Madam
again, we
Chairman,
can
could-
talk about this at another more time with this. Maybe this is all we discuss.
Madam Chairman, could I chime in here for a minute? This is Casey Carey. The right of way on Howe Road in Little Nahant, that was gone through a legal process, and that was actually voted on a town meeting for the town to accept it back, because a contractor was going to take it over and eliminate it. And so from what I understand, the town owns that now.
That's
Question?
correct.
That's right.
That's correct.
Yeah, so these are a lot of the scenarios that we need to hash through, and probably not tonight.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, yeah. There's a lot of this stuff to go through, and so this conversation kind of highlights why it's not a 5-minute conversation.
I think if I might, Mr. Chairman, just to summarize it, I think what we're looking for is a group of people that, could help us kind of unravel the nest of, all these different rights of ways and, the different statuses that they're in. Some have title research, some have surveys, some have been cleared, some have been encroached upon, some are marked, some aren't, and all those different things. And as Michelle said, and what we've talked about a few times now, is making sure that we do that title research on the ones that we're going to be marking and advertising on the website, that we have true ownership of them. And on our side, it tends to fall through the cracks of all the other things on our list of to-dos. So, we have funding for title research to be conducted. And what we were looking to do is form a group of people, a small committee, to kind of keep the work moving and give reports back to the selectmen on a monthly basis of, going kind of like 10 rights of ways at a time, maybe less, maybe more. And if any members of the planning board want to be a part of that, or the assessor's office, or open space, or historical society, that's great. We wanted to extend the invite to the planning board while you guys were here, because of your previous involvement.
Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Chairman, this is Casey Carey again. I would be happy to help with that. I think it'd be very interesting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
All
Tony,
right.
we can talk. You can talk with, the selectmen too.
Should we end our meeting, Madam Chairwoman?
And I think we can end our meeting.
Okay.
We have another item under the joint meeting,
Oh,
which is it's just discussion. If you guys want to end your portion of the meeting, that's fine. We wanted to
this
offer
is
you
going to be
guys
update on the ADUs, right? I'm sorry to
Jeff
talk over you,
Blake.
Tony.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Jeff Blake is here from KP Law, and we invited him to come and just kind of give us a brief overview of the ADU section of the new of the recent law that passed, and wanted to give you guys the opportunity to hear from him too. But it's just a discussion, no votes, no action.
Then can we close our meeting, the planning board, and we'll listen? And they can, if any of the planning board members want to join in on your public comment period, they could do that if they wanted to.
Sheila, I recommend you just stay open to just avoid any open meeting law issues, and then close after the discussion in case someone on your board wants to say something.
Okay.
Great.
Yes, I'll just introduce Jeff Blake from KP Law. Many of you have met Jeff, but I just wanted to point out that Jeff is municipal lawyer representing many towns. So
Drive my over.
he has I guess a broader perspective than just Nahant's. point of view, I guess.
I'm,
So with that, Jeff, would you take it away?
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate the introduction, and I'd like to say hello to everyone. It's been a while since I've been before you guys, and happy to come before you again. You've asked me here to talk about this recent change in Chapter 40A for what is now going to become a by right accessory dwelling unit in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in certain circumstances. And as you can imagine, you did say, Josh, that the KP law represents more than just Nahant, and we do. We represent about 130 cities and towns. And I can tell you, since the signing of this bill on August 6th, our phones have rung off the hook. And for good reason. There's an awful lot of things in there, and I think there's also some I don't want to call them rumors, but there's some contentions about what this act actually does, what it allows, what it doesn't allow. The good news is that it isn't effective until February 2nd, 2025. Even though there's an emergency preamble on the bill, if you go down through the bill, you'll find that the certain sections that require by right allowance of accessory dwelling units in single family dwelling zones doesn't come into play or come into effectiveness until February 2nd, 2025. So the acts of 2024, Chapter 150, Section 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 essentially have reworked at least that portion of 40A, or have brought into 40A as most of the Section 3, and this will go into Section 3. Most of the Section 3 is all about allowed uses, Dover Amendment uses, things that cities and towns can't regulate, solar, things that they can regulate but not significantly. And now the state, in an effort to increase, frankly, affordable housing stock, has brought into this chapter, it'll be Chapter 48, Section 3, 3A, an amendment. And the significant, one of the most significant portions of this new act is the creation of a statewide definition of an accessory dwelling unit. And from now on, I'm going to call them ADUs, so I don't have to keep saying that. And they're now establishing, a statewide rules governing the creation of ADUs. The act is going to require that an ADU is going to be as of right in every city and town. We can no longer require special permits. We can no longer require or prohibit them in certain districts. So I think that is a large change for everybody, because like most of the towns I represent, I'm sure you guys allow ADUs, but there's a special permit a process and requirement, which allows you to increase, to make sure that there's parking spaces, to make sure that to limit the size, to make them owner, that at least one portion of the property has to be owner occupied. All of that is now going to change. The new definition of an ADU, and it's going to be in Chapter 48, Section 1, it removes the ability of cities and towns to impose owner occupancy requirements on ADUs or their primary or principal dwellings. So it used to be that we called these in-law apartments because in-laws lived in the apartment and the family lived in the other house. We can no longer do that. So now you're going to have a situation where you can have a house and an ADU, and that ADU may be owned by somebody else and they rent it out. And so it's essentially going to be two units in there without that owner occupancy requirement. But it does affirm, and I think that this is where I'm catching a lot of question. It does affirm the abilities of municipalities to regulate or prohibit short-term rental of ADUs. I think when you first read it, you think, oh my God, we can't prevent short-term rentals of these ADUs under the act. And that's not true. We can still prohibit short-term rentals of ADUs. We'd have to do so in our bylaw. And it also clarifies the square footage reference in the definition, which applies to gross floor area. And that definition, to be specific, let me quickly bring it up. Yeah, I can't bring it up. Bear with me for a second. Yes, okay. So that definition says that I just had it highlighted and I clicked on the button. It says that in order to meet the definition of an accessory dwelling unit under the law, which would be allowed by right, it can be no larger in gross floor area than half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. So that means if you've got a 1,500 square foot principal dwelling, the maximum that would qualify by right would be 750. If you got 1,000 square foot, 2,000 square foot dwelling, the maximum that would qualify here would be 900 square feet, because that maxes it out. So the advice that we're giving, and I do want to kind of couch this a little bit. This act was signed into law on August 6th. It doesn't come into effect until February 2nd of 2025. And Housing and Livable Communities has in there the authority to promulgate regulations on the implementation of this act. That has not happened. So what I am telling you now is something that has been untested. And this is our thoughts, our collective thoughts at land use at KP Law. But of course, a court of law, things could change a little bit. But in any event, so what I said earlier was that you can't require a special permit for the definition that meets the gross floor area. However, in our opinion, if you have a situation where you're going to allow an ADU for, up to, let's say I actually have a community, believe it or not, that has one that allows them up to 2,500 square feet. So in our opinion, depending upon the size of the principal dwelling, but from that, not in my example, from 900 square feet up to 2,500 square feet, you could require a special permit because the definition specifically says that by right for a certain size. So that's something that I think municipalities are going to grapple with a little bit. But I don't know exactly where you guys fall in that and what your thoughts are. Some of the other requirements that the act prevents us from imposing are parking requirements in excess of one parking spot per ADU, except that when an ADU is located more than not more than a half a mile from a commuter rail station, a subway station, a ferry terminal, or a bus station, no parking spaces may be required. I suspect that the fact that they talk about a bus station is going to grab an awful lot of areas in your town and other towns. So that would be a situation where you can't require additional parking. In addition, with respect to even these by right ADUs, they are going to be subject to reasonable regulations, including but not limited to site plan review. I know that your educational uses require site plan review. In my opinion, you could do that here as well. Dimensional setbacks, your regular setbacks, restrictions on the bulk and height of structures, and as I had earlier said, and restrictions on and prohibitions of short-term rental ADUs. So in other words, you can say that you can't use them for short-term rentals. So as it stands right now, like I said before, under the act, the EOHLC, Housing and Livable Communities, is charged with issuing guidelines or promulgating regulations on these things. They haven't done it. They don't know when or if they will do it. They're not required to, but they can. My thoughts, and that's all these are at such an early stage, my thoughts are because affordable housing is a significant concern in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that you're going to see HLC draft regulations relatively quickly. That's just my feeling. But to answer a question that I received earlier from a member of, I think, in the audience, about when we expect those regulations, your guess is as good as mine. I just don't know. And there's no time frame and no requirement. You know, frankly, since the act is scheduled to take effect on February 2nd, I would, and I wonder if the fact that that's Groundhog Day has any any bearing. But the fact that it has to at least take effect on February 2nd, I would hope if there were going to be any regulations or guidelines that they would be promulgated before then, but they don't have to be. Where does that put you guys? I don't know. I haven't read through your bylaw cover to cover, but if you are currently requiring a special permit for ADUs, and the ADUs that you're permitting meet the definition that's in this new act, then likely you won't be able to enforce that section of your bylaw. In my opinion, because
Jeff,
your bylaw, go ahead.
On that part, you know, our town meeting isn't until May. If for some reason our bylaws conflict with that in any way, we don't have to have a special town meeting to fix that. We could wait until May. We're just not able to enforce it, right?
Yeah, I agree with that, Tony. You know, I was going to get there. Yeah, I do agree with that. I think it would be best if your bylaws conflict that you do clean it up at your next regularly scheduled town meeting. But I don't know that there's any requirement that you do, other than the fact that it would be confusing to somebody because they would be unenforceable. So you'd have a bylaw on the book that's unenforceable. And if you kept it on and kept it on and kept it on, it would just be very confusing. But you're 100% right. It just would not be enforceable. Now, I did feel the question earlier from somebody in the audience that asked about how this is different from the MBTA zoning. If you take a look at that under 48 section 3A, again, I believe, that one specifically requires municipalities to adopt bylaws. This one doesn't. This one simply says municipalities, this is the definition of an ADU. If it's in the requisite zoning district and it meets the definition, town, you can't require a special permit. So you would not need to go to town meeting to adopt a zoning bylaw that would allow an ADU that meets the definition of the state act in a district that meets that requirement. Versus the MBTA, which specifically says you have to adopt a bylaw.
Where it gives the municipality the ability to reasonably regulate. If the municipality wanted to take advantage of that option, it would have to be done through bylaws. Is that correct?
That is to reasonably regulate. Well, yes. And I also think, again, like I said before, if you want to change your definition and allow by special permit a larger ADU, you can do that as well by special permit, but it would have to be different than the ADU. And also with respect to by right, I don't know that you would have to specifically have in your zoning bylaw that they have to comply with dimensional setbacks. The law says they have to. Your bylaw says these are the setbacks for dwellings or for buildings. So I don't know that your bylaw would specifically have to call that out, that an ADU, unless you are going to allow an ADU to have a different setback than the principal dwelling. I would caution that it would be difficult for you to say a principal dwelling has a front yard setback of 30 feet, but an ADU has to have 80 feet or something like that, where you're essentially putting in a poison pill. I frankly have seen bylaws that require ADUs to actually be behind the primary or the principal dwelling. But we'll have to shake that out. I don't know if that would be a reasonable dimensional setback. But those are something you could do in your zoning bylaw, as long as you're gonna be different. And as long as, you wanna be different than the ADU definition.
But the by right would be a proposed ADU that meets the current setbacks of our zoning. If it was trying to do more than that, then it wouldn't be by right anymore. The reason I asked you that question is I was talking about this earlier. Our residential districts have either 10,000 minimum square feet lots or 30,000 square foot minimum lots. However, there are many properties that are less than 10,000 and they're pre-existing that zoning.
Yep. Yep.
If a property only had 9,000 square feet, but had plenty of space to potentially build an ADU and still meet the setback requirements of the yard dimensions, is that a by right situation, or is that?
I think that at that point, it would be it's a pre-existing non-conforming use and structure on the law. So they could increase, it would be increasing the non-conformity because the lot's too small. You would still have to go to your zoning board of appeals and get what is known as a section 6 finding, that the increase is not more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conformity. So to answer your question, I don't think that one would be by right.
That would apply to, as Tony said, a lot, or I should say many lots in town. There are many lots under 10,000 square feet. I venture to guess half of them.
I imagine if they were proposing an ADU that did not expand the size of the existing structure, if they were just converting space within the current structure, it would be a different scenario. But once they start to add to it, if they're on a non-conforming lot, that's where it's a different situation, which would apply to a lot of properties in Nahant. So there's a lot of questions like that, I think, that we have that are specific to Nahant, and obviously we'll be talking a lot more about it in the future. The other one was the bus station definition. If it's the same as the MBTA 3A law, then there are no residential properties that are within half a mile of a bus station in Nahant. If it's different and it's referring to a bus stop, that's a different situation.
Yeah, bus stop. Bus stop would be every single house in Nahant is within a half mile of a bus stop.
Right.
Well, that's what worried me, and I'm just trying to quickly scroll through and find the definition. It says bus station. So I think that we would have to, I think that we certainly would borrow from the definition of the MBTA legislation, or certainly that would be our argument to begin with. Again, as I've said, this is a brand new law, but I tend to agree with you. And it seems to be rational to borrow that definition, even though it's not defined in this act. But it hasn't been litigated yet, to the extent that it will be litigated.
And just as a reminder for folks, that is only relevant to whether you need to have a parking spot available or not, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Yep. Yep.
So, go ahead, Jeff. It means we're interrupting.
No, I was just going to ask if there are any questions on there is another significant change, in my opinion. To me, it's a huge change. That was big, the ADUs, but the ADUs seem to be the hot thing for the last 3 years, and everybody's dealing with them now. The other change is to the merger of lots under common ownership. and I don't know how much play that's gotten with you guys, but it used to be if you owned two lots, and at one point they were both buildable lots, and then they later became non-buildable because of a zoning change, and they were in common ownership, they merged so that you would decrease the non-conformity. So if you've got, I'm going to just pick a number, 12,000 square feet to allow for a building, and you only have you had a lot that was 10,000 square feet, and then another lot that was 10,000 square feet. Those lots merged for purposes of zoning, and you essentially lost a buildable lot on the other 10,000 square feet. Now, under this new law, there's a number of conditions, but under this new law, they are essentially exempting out this merger doctrine that would then allow, if you own the two lots, and then they became non-conforming, they would stay a separate entity and they would stay two buildable lots. They have to be at least 10,000 square feet. They have to have 75 feet of frontage. They have to be located in a zoning district that allows for single family residential homes. And then on that, it gets better, okay? On those lots, well, one could be built out already and it would be all set. But on the other one, you cannot make a building that exceeds 1,850 square feet of heated living space. It can't contain more than 3 bedrooms and shall not be used as a seasonal home or short-term rental. So they got rid of the merger for some of these lots, but they also put on it's going to be cumbersome for our enforcement staff. It's going to be cumbersome for our building inspectors. It's just going to be cumbersome as to what can be built there. And once it is built and it is sold and it's been in existence for 8, 10, or 12 years, are we going to remember that this lot was grandfathered in or was exempted out from merger when it comes time for somebody to want to put on say an ADU? Would they then be by right? So it's something that I wanted to make you aware of. I make all of my building commissioners, zoning enforcement officers aware of it. This is, in my opinion, it's kind of the sleeper in there. Everybody was, oh my God, these ADUs, everybody's going to be able to build them. Yeah, they can. They have to meet the definition. But yeah, it's going to change it for us. We're not going to have the control that we were having. Good news is we can prevent short-term rentals because frankly, I think a lot of people worry about somebody getting an ADU and then just renting it out every week and party house, et cetera, et cetera. That looks like you can prevent them through a bylaw. The other changes, they made some changes to Chapter 48, Section 17, the appeal. They made it harder, I think, for abutters to appeal. I don't know how deep you want to get into that. It's more legal than anything else. But they did make it a little bit more difficult for an abutter to appeal. They also helped with a bond requirement on some of these appeals. We have recently been starting to see a lot of bond requirements, and frankly, we started to see when abutters appealed developers, the developers moving to get bonds, because you have a situation where a developer wants to build let's say a 20 unit apartment house, multifamily dwellings. Go to the planning board, they get approval. If they got to go to a ZBA, they get approval. They go everywhere they want to go. They go to their planning board, they get their approval, and a abutter appeals it. And a abutter is able to tie that up in court for, in some instances, years, or certainly a year once everything. So what they've done here with this new section that's increased the bond is they've allowed the courts at the request of most of the time it's the developer to require the abutters to put up a bond. So if their case lacks merit, a court can make that determination and they can make them put up a bond. We have actually seen that happening prior to this. But it's interesting to see. And again, this is all to promote housing in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because some of these abutter groups were tying up these developers for long periods of time. After the municipality said, hey, look, we're fine with this. So that was in there. And they've got a new section 40A, section 18, that talks about veteran preference for affordable housing. And again, this starts to get a little bit dense. But that's pretty much in broad strokes what this Affordable Homes Act did. Chapter 150 of the Acts of 2024. I think, like I say, I got some questions sent over to me, and for some reason my computer's not working right now. But I think that hits all the questions that were asked of me. Does anybody else have any more?
I have a couple of comments, Jeff.
Yeah.
I guess whether you're in favor of ADUs or opposed to ADUs, this is, to me, an historic piece of legislation. Certainly, the autonomy of municipal zoning is reduced. I guess, to my way of thinking, practically speaking, there's no such thing as single family zoning anymore in the state of Massachusetts. And I guess February 2nd, 2025, it's gonna be here pretty quickly, and we got a lot of research to do and likely a lot of work to do in the intervening time. So it's a big deal.
Mr. Chairman,
Interesting that
I
you
have a
should
couple
say
comments,
that,
but-
Josh.
Pardon me, Jeff?
I said it's interesting you should say that about the single family zones. That is something that I brought up as well. And how will that be interpreted? Because you're right, most of those zones aren't single family. They're single family, multi-family dwellings. They're rural, residential. They're, so I don't know that the shorthand that was used in the act, how does that really come? How does that play out? So I tend to agree with you. And like a lot of legislation, I think that the legislatures have a goal in mind and they try to make that goal, but I don't know that they always get the advice of land use professionals or people that would pick that apart and say what you just said, things like that. There are a number of questions that we've kicked around at the firm, and I'm not going to really get into them too deep because a lot of them are really kind of nitpicky legal stuff. But that's one of them. What's a single family zone? I mean, our municipalities don't have single family zone. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen one called single family zone. So, I can certainly speculate as to what the legislator meant, but I don't know. So I think we're going to have to stay tuned. And actually, I was able to bring up, I had some questions here. They asked the difference between the MBTA and this as of right legislation about going to town meeting for approval. I think I touched on that. Tony and I went back and forth a little bit. I think we touched on that. I think we touched on how the square footage is determined. ADUs cannot be short-term rentals. I think that's right. There was a question here about when HLC will promulgate the regulations. As I said before, you would hope that the effective date's February 2nd. I would hope that they would do it. Frankly, I'd hope they do it on November 1, so we can all figure it out and do it. But I don't know that. And then there was a question about best samples of ADU regulations. I don't have any at this point. I don't really have any samples because the law is so new. But I'm happy to, once we start delving into it, I'm sure that somebody's gonna ask us to draft up some regulations or some bylaw rule regulations that we think are compliant with the new language and the recent amendment. And we will certainly, I'd be happy to share them with you, no matter what community we draft them for. Obviously, I give you a caveat that this community is different than yours, but happy to assist there. Anybody else have any questions?
I've read Marblehead's ADU regulations, which predate this piece of state legislation. I just Googled Marblehead ADUs or something like that and found it on their website. I found it informative. We'll see how applicable it is, and like I said, it predated this piece of legislation, so I don't know if there's any conflicts with this, but it seemed certainly well thought out.
Yeah, I think when we're gonna do these bylaws, it's not just gonna be, probably not just one spot. We're gonna have to probably do a table of uses, do something in the dimensional table. And we're gonna have to really call them out. And again, if you decide that your ADU, you're willing to go up to 1,000 square feet, then we're gonna have to call out that if you're doing 1,000 square feet, I think you can do a special permit for those, because it no longer meets the definition of the by right ADU. And then I think we could step in. But of course, then the homeowner homeowner could simply reduce their square footage down to 900 or half the gross floor area if it's smaller than 1,800 square feet, and do it by right. But if you wanted to add a little bit more, you certainly could. And I think you can do it by special permit.
I think Shannon had some questions.
Thank you, Tony. Mr. Chairman, and Madam Chairwoman, if I could just express, what my reaction from what I've heard tonight and what I've read recently. I'm a pretty conservative person. I'm a 10th Amendment guy. I like the boundaries that local governments have between state governments and state governments have between federal governments. My reaction to this ADU legislation isn't so much like oriented towards the 10th Amendment. It really is a property ownership issue. And so, being a conservative guy, I have to kind of get behind this. The state has told us that this is what property owners can do. I would urge great caution and patience for those residents and those property owners in town that might want to build an ADU, to just be patient. Let the regulations play out. Let us, as your town government, try to build regulations internally before any shovels hit the ground. One of the things that, my wife said to me immediately after this happened was, can we build a 2-car garage and an apartment for our son? And I'm like, I don't know. But I would just really urge the residents of Nahant just to be very patient and cautious with this. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, Jeff, unless anyone else on the planning board or board of selectmen have any comments or questions, I want to thank you for coming tonight and giving us that overview. Obviously, we have the legislature has put a lot on the municipalities in the Commonwealth, and we have a lot to look at. I still don't feel like I have a comfortable understanding on the, as part of what Shannon just said of like what the urgency is, what the town's next steps should be, or or need to be as far as if we have to do anything at the upcoming town meeting or at a town meeting at all. So I'd like to talk to you more about that. You know, because it's September next week, and that's there's obviously a lot of details involved in this, and if we're going to be even considering something like that, we have some work to do. But I don't know, like as you said, you know, maybe we're not rushing into that because of potential litigation and regulations that are coming out, and we don't want to step in front of it and then have to revisit it again. So that's
I think, Tony, I think that we will have, like I said before, we will have drafted either zoning bylaw amendments, regulations, or something that we believe would be consistent with this, to the extent that, you know, you could also do nothing. And ADUs are allowed by right if they meet this definition. I'd have to look at your zoning bylaw. If you have an ADU bylaw that requires a special permit, we may have to just tinker with it a little bit. We may have to change our definition to say that it's more than 900 square feet or some of the other stuff that are in there. So it might be a slight tinkering. And again, I'm more than happy to work with you and Dan, you and Dan, or whomever, and assist you on that. We do have a fair amount of time, but I get your point. It's September already, and September becomes May like that, and all of a sudden we're all sitting, you know, in town hall for a town meeting. So, but you know, you guys aren't going to be alone. I think everybody's going to go through it, and we're going to soon probably have a lot of some more guidance on it. And maybe even some sample stuff. It's hard to do a one size fits all sample because everybody's bylaws are so different. And if we're tweaking a bylaw that's different, I can't give you, you know, Swampscotch or
I don't
whatever.
think we have anything in our zoning right now related to ADUs.
Then you don't have to do anything.
That's right,
You
we
don't
don't.
have to do anything. You could just do the by right. You could just do the by right. And if it meets this definition, it's by right, and they go in and say, you know, Mr. Building Inspector, I need a permit for that. That's what I'm gonna do.
Unless of course we want to take advantage of some of the options that the legislature has given us to regulate, then we would have to do something.
That's correct.
I think it would be wise to consider those options. I mean, our duty is to the town of Nahant. And we have to do whatever we can to protect it, whatever that means different things to different people. But I don't think doing nothing is a smart approach.
I see Michelle has her hand up.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Jeff Blake, for presenting tonight before the community. It was a great overview. My question is, Tony, you alluded to litigation. Can you just highlight what your comments are regarding what litigation regarding this new legislation would come out?
I was just reiterating, I think Jeff had mentioned it. I have no idea what could possibly.
But I can certainly jump in. Michelle, for example, Josh had brought up the fact that, you know, single family zone. At some point, I suspect the definition of single family zone may come into, we may have a building inspector out there that says, you don't live in a single family zone. We don't have single family zones in town. Therefore, you got to get a special permit or it's not allowed. I suspect that ultimately some questions like that will be litigated. Not necessarily by Nahant, but somewhere, some of these, as we've read through the act, there's some things that we get some of the stuff is like, I don't know how that's going to be interpreted. But I think Josh's was perfect. He said, there's not single family zones in zoning much anymore. And I don't know that your town actually has what they call a single family zone. We might have rural residential, we may have residential, we may have, you know, a whole host of other things. But it's not single-family zone. It's a zone that allows for single-family housing. But, you know, I'm sure that there's gonna be some building inspectors out there that are gonna say, no, they're gonna get appealed, they're gonna go to the land court, and the land court judge is gonna have to make that call. What does single-family zoning mean?
That's helpful. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Jeff, and everyone who did have all their comments and questions tonight. I think this has been very helpful and hope we can meet again and hold another joint meeting like this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, if there's nothing else for Jeff, we could close the joint meeting. You want to close your meeting first, Sheila?
So I'll close the planning board section. Josh, yes. So I'll take a roll call vote to adjourn our joint meeting. So
Motion to
Shannon.
adjourn.
Bianchi?
I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
second. All right, thank you, Michelle. So Shannon Bianchi,
Aye.
Michelle Capano,
Bye.
Casey Carey. Casey, you still with us?
She is, she's muted
Okay.
though.
She might be unmuted.
Oh, here you go.
Okay.
Aye,
Okay, thank you,
aye,
Casey.
sorry.
That's all right. Rob Steinberg, Steve Viviano, Sheila Hambleton is an aye. And I thank everyone for tonight. It was very important. Thank you.
Thanks, planning board.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I
Select-
move that the board, I
Okay,
move
go
that the
ahead.
Board of Selectmen close the meeting with the planning board.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Hearing seeing none, roll call vote.
Rob Tibbo, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye, and Gene, you're muted. If you want to vote. Let's see. Gene, I don't know if you can hear us, but if you can unmute yourself and vote to either close the joint meeting or keep it open if you want.
Maybe press the space bar on your keyboard.
Well, you got
We have
two out
to-
of three.
Yeah, we have 2 votes. We can move on and let
Yeah.
Gene work that out.
There he is.
Move on.
Well, you can vote yes or no to closing the meeting. All right.
So,
We have a bunch of event requests.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Well, let me know if you need anything, Tony.
Thank you.
All right, I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the following event requests. The Friends of Nahant Library Book Sale on Saturday, September 28th, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. in front of the library on Pleasant Street. Also, the Nahant Youth Fall Soccer on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. from September 7th, 2024 to October 26th, 2024 at Flash Road Park, and the Mike Canty Memorial Concert event at Bailey's Hill on Sunday, September 15th, 2024, starting at 3 p.m. And the Nahant Women's Club Holiday Fair on Saturday, November 30th, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Nahant Town Hall. We have a second.
second,
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I think we're gonna strike the Mike Canty event.
Okay. All of the above minus the Mike Canty event.
Yep.
Okay.
Josh, have you got me now?
Yep. Yep, you're hearing loud and clear.
Thank you.
So for discussion, the library book sale will also have hot dog and hamburgers and refreshments for sale. They'll be blocking off Pleasant Street from Nahant Road to Central Street from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. This request has been reviewed and approved by the Nahant Police Department, Fire Department, and Department of Public Works. That is the only discussion I have, other than the youth soccer is as it always is, and same with the Nahant Women's Club Holiday Fair. Any discussion, Gene or Rob, before we vote?
I'm good.
Good here.
Okay, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibbo, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. We have a presentation by the Nahant Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee for signs planned to be installed at Lodge Park. We have Ellen Antrim on the line to discuss this signage, and I think, Tony, you have some things to share.
Yes.
Okay, are you able to put up the, share that screen, Tony, first?
Hold on 1 second here.
Thanks. Okay, great. Thanks. So, yeah, thanks for including me in your agenda. And I'm here on behalf of the Open Space Committee to share the interpretive signs that we plan to have installed at Large Park, hopefully before the snow flies. So we want to kind of move along with this. Starting in 2022, we got CPA funding to develop a Lodge Park management plan. And part of what came out of that plan was some recommendations to improve the user experience at Lodge Park. And one recommendation was to install both welcome and interpretive signage for visitors. So we got a CPA grant then to develop the signs, and also a donation from SWIM. And so for the last 14 months, the committee's been working on these signs. And we finally come up with a final design. They follow National Park Service's interpretive sign standards, which includes 200 to 300 words and 3 to 4 images max. And they are similar to the one at the Nahant Life Saving Station. The graphic design and manufacture is being done by Pioneer Graphics. And the committee feels that these signs could become a model for future panels in town. I just want to mention that we want to especially thank Robert Wilson. He contributed several images and also worked with the committee providing beautiful photographic images and historical images that he digitized to the standards required for these panels. So, and also Paul Wilson provided some images, so they were really helpful to us. The panels are in the final draft form, awaiting our final approval, and we wanted to share them with the BOS for comments. And so if you can go on to the first panel. So this would be at the Canoe Beach parking lot, and the sign size is listed there. So it's just a welcome sign with some specific information about using the park and visiting the park. And then the next sign. And does anybody have any comment about this one? I guess I could ask that. Or should we go through them all and you can comment at the end if you have anything? Okay, Tony, do you mind scrolling to the next one?
Yep, I think this is the next one that
Oh, sorry, I didn't know you had moved it along. So this looks exactly the same as the other one, except it's a different bird. And this one will be at well, there's a little circle on the map that says you are here. It's kind of going to be at where the DPW garage is, up that way. So when you enter the Lodge Park area, it gives you again, the visitor entrance information. And then the next one. And the next one is just an overall historic timeline of the evolution of Lodge Park. And that's going to be close to the entrance where the road splits as well. And this one's much smaller. It's 24 by 36. And it will, so when somebody enters the park, they can sort of get a good brief history of how we got to where we are with Lodge Park. And then the next one is the military history, which is going to sit above the the building that's sort of falling apart down there. That's the East Point Signal building. So as you're overlooking that building, you'll have a little bit of the evolution again of the military history of Lodge Park. And then the next one just gives an overview of the natural history and the different things that Lodge Park supports for the natural environment. And that will hopefully be over near the benches that overlook where you see a lot of those eiders and pollinators. So, and then the last is just where the signs are going to be, so you can see where they'll be placed. So, so yeah, that's it in a nutshell. So, I'm just looking for any comments or feedback if anybody has any.
Well, they look great, Ellen. As you know, not the first time I'm seeing them, but I'm particularly pleased to see the welcome sign at the New Beach parking lot, because I know I've been up there and people have arrived on bicycles or whatever, and they want to keep going, and they encounter the Northeastern's signage, which has been increased a lot lately and pretty unwelcoming. And I think it's important for people to know, hey, there is a public park up there, and yes, you are welcome to go to that park, welcome and encouraged. So all the signs are great, but in particular, I think that welcome sign at Canoe Beach parking lot will be beneficial for anybody visiting. And you know, I love the idea that the Open Space Committee is considering, you know, these as sort of a template for other potential sites, like the all the great work that's happening at Fort Ruckman right now that was sponsored by the Open Space Committee with funding from CPC. So anyway, I like them.
Hey, I would also add that you guys, the Open Space Committee, does a fantastic job of identifying and graphics. And this is a big help for those visiting the parks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jean.
I'll chime in also, and I'm thrilled with what you've done. I think presenting a little bit of the history, a little bit of the local flora and fauna. What a great approach, and I agree 100% with Josh that that first sign at the resident parking area needs to be as big and bold as possible, with as much of a welcome as we can give people who want to walk out there.
Great, thanks, Rob. Okay. Well,
Rob, do they live in town? Rob, flora and fauna.
Florida. Oh, gotcha.
We were all had to catch up with Eugene.
Too quick.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate it.
I like the I really like the signs too, Ellen. I think your committee did a great job, and I'm excited about using this template in other areas of town along the Heritage Trail, Tri Mountain, Bailey. And this is something that we've. So I'm thankful to your committee for taking the lead on it.
Great. Yeah, it was a fun project. We're just glad to be almost. I think that the DPW is also going to be really helpful in helping us install them. So appreciate that one, Zach. So, all right. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. Okay, we have next on the agenda is a vote to authorize town administrator to award and negotiate sale of real estate property known as the 12 lots of Coast Guard housing property. This motion's a mouthful. Any volunteers, or do you want me to do it?
I move that the Board of Selectmen, pursuant to the vote taken under Article 20 of the May 15th, 2021 annual town meeting, to dispose of the parcels of land located at 294 Castle Road, Lot 1, 298 Castle Road, Lot 3, 114 Gardner Road, Lot 5, 2 Goddard Drive, Lot 7, 6 Goddard Drive, Lot 9, and 1 Goddard Drive, Lot 11, and to authorize the town administrator to execute on behalf of the Board of Selectmen any and all purchase and sale agreements, affidavits, settlement statements, and other documents necessary or appropriate to accomplish the sale of the foregoing lots.
Second,
Well done, Rob. Discussion. Guess I'll just say that Tony is our Chief Procurement Officer. So this is related to that, and tremendous amount of work has gone into this effort. This is half of the 12 lots listed here. The bids are now open, at least for the first one. And those bids will be opened on, I think it's September 14th, correct, Tony? And then,
17th is not.
Oh,
September
17th, and then
17th is the first one.
and then one per week per lot for the following 5 weeks. I understand that more than 100 of the bid proposal processes have been downloaded from our website. And the properties will also be listed on Zillow starting tomorrow-ish. I think you said you posted it on Monday and it takes up to 72 hours. So these lots will hit the World Wide Web, maybe to a broader audience, this week.
So this vote is in advance of the awarding process, or because the Town Administrator Act gives the town administrator the authority to award contracts for supplies and services. But when this is the sale of real property, we needed this additional vote of authorization. And because we're trying to within 48 hours of the bid opening, we wanted to do it through the town administrator, so we wouldn't have to post a meeting every single time. But the way that this is going to work is procurement law requires that when we open bids, that we state the name of the bidder and the amount. Our legal counsel will be recording that information as we open it. And what they will do is they will write the name, the amount, and then it'll say, offer one. Then within that 24 to 48 hours, legal counsel is going to review those bids in more depth to understand, what the different elements of the bid are, specifically the financing element of it. And we'll put together kind of a list of recommendations for which bids are the highest and best value to the town. And when they're presented to me, it'll be presented, with the offer 1, offer 2, offer 3, or 4 or 5. It won't include the name. So I just want to, add that element, or for the public to know, that there, when we get the recommendation from our legal counsel, we won't be making a decision based on the name of the bidder. It'll be based on the bid itself, the details of the bid.
Tony, what would be highest value to the town?
Highest and best value, especially for the town, is a mix between price and ability to close. So the way that the RFP is written, it's structured that, cash offers is number 1, pre-commitment is number 2, pre-approval is number 3, pre-qualified is number 4, and then other contingencies or other items, come after that. So, a cash offer of high value would be at the highest value to the town.
Thank you.
And Tony, those bids are opened in a public forum, correct?
Yes, immediately after the deadline. So September 17th, bids are due at 3 o'clock in the town hall. We'll be going into the main hall shortly after that 3 o'clock deadline to open all the bids in a public setting. Anybody is welcome to attend.
As for the motion, I think it's critical that the town have the ability to act quickly in accepting the offer. And this motion, I think, brings us to that. I'm highly in favor of it.
Yeah, definitely. Better than us having to convene a meeting every time we open the bid. And those meetings have to get posted 24 hours in advance, and who knows if we're all available. So makes a lot of sense from a practical point of view. I agree. Any other discussion on this motion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibbo, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. We have a vote to approve American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funding for GIS upgrades and DEP public water service line inventory requirement.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve American Rescue Plan Act, known as ARPA, spending to fund the utility mapping and GIS support project in the amount of $25,000 and the DEP public water system service line inventory project in the amount of $18,570 for a total of $43,750 in requested ARPA spending.
Second.
Yeah, so we received some documents from Kristen this afternoon with kind of an accounting of all those ARPA funds, excluding the $25,000 and $18,570 listed above. There's $61,095. I think we need to spend that before the end of the year. Tony has reviewed these two proposals with me earlier, and probably you all as well. They seem like money well spent for the town of Nahant looking into the future. Tony, do you want to expand or explain to everyone what these two projects are?
Yes. One of the projects is actually all municipalities are required to inventory their water service lines and provide that inventory to DEP by October. So one of these projects will be to conduct that research and develop the inventory for that requirement. But the other element of that is that it will create a new GIS layer that we can upload into our system. The other project is actually to renew our GIS system. The town has had a GIS system in the past that, we have layers for fire hydrants, water lines, sewer lines, water valves, all different different data points that show where certain things are in the town and how to operate them properly. That license has expired, and that license originally was just a host license. GIS offers a mobile license as well. So what the other proposal is going to be is to, renew our license, upgrade our license, and bring and update all of our layers with the most recent information. So we've done a lot of projects in the past 5 years, whether it was water lines or sewer lines or manholes or hydrants or things of that nature that we'd like or stormwater infrastructure that we want to roll into our GIS system. And then the mobile element of that will actually, our DPW will be trained on how to use the GIS system in the field and upload new information real time. This is one of those, having a GIS system is one of those projects that, it's obviously extremely valuable for a community to have all of that information digitized and up on GIS for the future. But it's also one of those things when you're working with a limited budget, it tends to be, one of the capital projects that falls off the priority list. So ARPA funds is, the perfect funding source for these types of projects. In fact, when ARPA was passed by the federal government, it really focused on water, sewer, stormwater infrastructure projects. So this falls right into that category, and look forward to getting these projects done soon.
Yeah, I love the idea of getting this information on the GIS, incorporating the GIS, and historically we rely on a lot of institutional knowledge, and while we hope Zach stays in his role and you stay in your role, and Chief Antrim and Chief Furlong stay in their roles, people do move on, and it's a great way to have all this information documented for the future. So I love the idea.
Tony, quick question regarding the GIS as far as hydrants are concerned. Will it or can it capture flow rates at individual hydrants? Through testing, can we identify the flow rate of a hydrant and include this? Obviously, two things come to mind with respect to identifying hydrants, or the best hydrant, let's say, in the vicinity of a fire is critical to the fire department. And many communities do this through painting different colors on the hydrants. But if we could capture that, we not only get the ability to identify where the better hydrants are, but if we could also track them over time to see if that flow rate changes. And when I say that, I mean a flow rate could change because of a partial blockage in the line to the hydrant, or because a valve is faulty or something along those lines. And this is something that would be identified if it was a gradual decrease. You'd be able to see it. Is this something that we could capture, or should? I don't know.
Or an increase if we've changed a water main that feeds those hydrants.
Yep, absolutely.
GIS system does allow you to incorporate that type of information. You can list all any sort of information that you want. I don't know if we have to date, so that would be kind of a separate and get some updated flow information for each hydrant. But
Okay.
Certainly the new GIS system would allow us to upload that information into it.
Yeah, that's the nexus of my question is, I don't know where we are in the testing either, but if we had the ability, then this, what a great place to store it.
Are the layers editable by the users? So for example, as we learned what hydrant had such and such a flow, Zach or whomever can get in there and enter that information? That's great.
Yes, exactly. And that's where that mobile element really helps out. It's even with like shut off valves, you can upload information about how many turns it takes to open or close a valve. So when if we're ever in a situation where we have to exercise a valve, we can either look at the GIS to know how many turns it takes, and we can update it in the field. So same idea with fire hydrants.
Great. I love it.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibbo, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. Coast Guard housing update. Was there something you want to discuss here, Tony?
I think we basically hit most of it. I wanted to mention that we've had over 100 downloads of the RFP. I wanted to mention that we had a public session the other night. There was not a ton of people in attendance in person, but there was about 40 or so folks watching the live stream. We've received a number of questions through cghsale@nahant.org. You already mentioned that we've put the listings on Zillow, and we're waiting for those to go live. And so the 100 or so downloads that we've had already is purely based on just local marketing through, website, newspaper articles, newspaper postings, community meetings, things like that. So I expect to have more downloads once those go on Zillow. I had a site visit. Again, these are optional, but a site visit yesterday from 11 to 1. We have another one tomorrow from 11 to 1, and one next week on Wednesday from 11 to 1. Yesterday I had a few people come by and stop in and ask some questions, really good questions, and was able to provide them information or direction where to get their information from. I did get asked a few questions from folks following the public meeting, follow-up questions about the ADUs, which we kind of talked about earlier today, questions about flood zone and flood insurance. None of these properties are in the flood zone. None of them will require flood insurance. There are a couple properties, lot 9, 8, 9, 10, and 12, that the buffer zone does overlap some corners of those lots, but barely. I think only lot 10 does it encroach on the buildable area of the lot. So it's unlikely that those will require any major NOIs or anything of that nature, but it would only be done at the local level with the Concom. So that's pretty much the update. I think things are going, we're doing as best, as much as we can, as best we can, to, make this a successful process for the town's decision at town meeting, and keeping our fingers crossed, and going to continue to work at it, and hopefully we get some successful bids next month.
Have we had any bids yet?
No bids have been received yet. I suspect typically you're not going to see bids until the date that they're due.
Yeah.
One thing we talked about a little bit the other day, Tony, was the minimum bids and whether those should be included in like on our website or on Zillow, and where do we wind up on that?
I added them. There, and they're on Zillow, or will be on Zillow once they go live. I think I think that part of the reason we added that was because some of those downloads could just be for informational purposes, and then once you read into the minimum bids, you might make a decision that it's not for you. So it's really hard to gauge the success of the bids this early. I think I wouldn't use the attendance of the public meeting or the site visits or the amount of questions or even the amount of downloads, which is a big number. I really wouldn't read too far into that. I don't think you can really use it as a gauge for what to expect on the due dates. But we did add those minimum numbers to the website, and they will be on Zillow too.
I think that's good, because so people aren't going through the process of downloading it and then immediately saying, "Oh, I can't afford that."
I think by now everybody in town knows what the minimums are.
Yeah,
At least it appears that way.
Yeah, the signs are very helpful too. That was a nice addition, and I know the other selectmen know, but for everyone else, it is kind of amazing how much work went into this. And Tony's been really busy with this, all kinds of things that you wouldn't suspect. Like we have to get clearance from the FAA to sell these lots, to make sure there isn't going to be interference with aircraft coming into Logan, and One site had, needs to be dug up to check the soil on that because it had the tank removed, several years back, all kinds of things. So,
To that end, we've received our environmental phase 1 analysis. It's been included. We've added it to the RFP, and all property that's up for sale is clean. And the other properties that we've demoed came back clean as well. But we didn't include the properties that are still have structures on them. And then all 12 of the FAA determinations have come back as no hazard. So we've included all that into the RFP as well. And they've now, all the property lines are staked out as well at the property now too.
and then two of the existing structures will be officially unoccupied as of Labor Day, right? Or the day after Labor Day.
Both of them are unoccupied now. But technically the one on Goddard Drive, we take control over on Labor Day. So I'm working through legal on whether we can, through a change order of our open contract with American Environmental, who did the demo of the other properties, if we can hire them to do those two, or we may have to bid it out again. I'm trying to figure that element out, but obviously we didn't want to put the cart before the horse. Want to make sure we get those two properties under our control first.
All right. Tony, did you want to mention the I&I work and water type manhole covers and so on?
I was going to get into that during the town administrator's report.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I got ahead of myself here. All right, ongoing business, we have more votes. Vote to approve changes to the FY master fee schedule. So I guess there's some discussion here that we want to go through first.
Here's the fee schedule on the screen. So we had this out for comment. You've got copies of comments in your packet that have been shared with you with Kristen. Most of the comments we received were questions for clarification. A lot of it was related to the parking sticker change. There was some confusion, it seemed, that the town was proposing that you would have to buy, a sticker twice in a year, like once for 6 months and once for another 6 months. And we've tried to clear that up, that it's still the same setup where you have one sticker for the entire year. You only have to buy it once. The proposal is that if you purchase it before June 30th, it's one price at $15. If you purchase it after July 1st, it's a different price at $25. We did receive one comment related to the parking sticker that from members of the finance committee asking us to consider or further look into the possibility of potentially charging a different rate for cars that are not registered in Nahant and don't pay excise tax in Nahant. It's an interesting concept, something that we could look into in the future. I think the first thought that came to my mind was, I don't know if we have the ability to decipher that with our system. So administratively, I don't know if it's possible, but it's an interesting concept. I have no idea. We haven't done any research to this point on how what the split is between, vehicles that purchase stickers that are registered in town versus vehicles that are not registered in town. So we could further look into that. I don't think it should hold up the vote tonight. I also relate to the parking sticker. right now our proposal is $15 from January 1st to June 30th and $25 from July 1st to December 31st. Over the last 5-6 weeks or so, we've looked at those numbers, and I think that, you know, if the board was interested in reducing the $25 to $20, that's something that, you know, we could definitely consider. If you think about it in the perspective of the old fee, if you had 2 cars and you're buying 2 stickers, you're paying $20. If these new fees go into play or get approved, and you are in the same situation, you come to buy a sticker before June 30th, well, what you used to spend $20, you're now spending $30. So it's not that drastic of an increase. However, if you purchase your sticker after July 1st, you're paying $50 for those 2 cars versus the 20 previously. So that is a large jump. And hopefully, you know, that large of a jump would incentivize people to come in early. However, if the board wanted to consider changing that to $20 from July 1st to December 31st, that's certainly something within your purview if that's something you want to do. And then as far as everything else, there were really no other comments, pro or con against the other suggested changes.
I guess I just wanted to take the chance to remind people that when these changes were suggested, the basis for that change was a local resident, Jeff Lewis, volunteered his time to survey 30 or 35 towns in the general area, looked at their fees, and benchmarked our proposed fees against all those. And, you know, we're sort of right in the middle of the bell curve on all these proposed fees. So these are, in a nutshell, completely in line with all the other towns around here. Did I get that right, Tony?
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. So this is not a situation where these are just sort of pulled out of the air. This was, you know, fair bit of research went into this. So I just want to make sure people know that and appreciate the effort that Jeff Lewis volunteered this time.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of work. So Josh, what do we want to do as far as the discussion on the beach parking sticker rate change from July 1st to December 31st?
Well, I'm willing to hear what you and Jean have to say. I think, honestly, I don't have strong feelings one way or another. I think, you know, the reason for the 2-tiered fee is to encourage people to make that purchase before June 30th for the reasons we've listed at previous meetings. I don't have strong feelings one way or another, to be honest, Rob.
My thought would be to go with the $20 level. I think Tony's concern or discussion really does suggest that going to the 25, I'm not sure if we're getting into a level of punitive response as far as the date of filing. Certainly we want to urge compliance, and I think probably the $20 should put us where we need to be.
What do you think, Gene?
I think if you compare it to other communities up and down the coast, I don't think $25 is excessive by any measure. But if what we want to do is reduce that to 20, I'm okay with that too.
No, right. I guess I agree with that too. It's I certainly don't think $25 is excessive, but like I said, I don't have a, I don't have very strong feelings one or another, but I'll take a shot at this. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the proposed changes as presented in the FY25 master fee schedule, with the exception of the parking fee increase from changing the parking fee increase starting July 1st to $20.
Second,
Hopefully that was a coherent motion. Okay. Any discussion, any further discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibble, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. Next item on the agenda is preserving East Point. Not much new there on the eminent domain side. Upcoming next week, I think it's the 4th, which is Wednesday, is another hearing with Judge Karp. And still no decision from the appellate court on the Article 97, also known as the dedication case. That's been with the appellate court for I think 193 days now. That's a long time. But we'll see when we hear something on that. That's really it on East Point. All right, now town administrators report.
Thank you. On the list here, we have process for reporting deceased animals to public health agents and or to the DPW. So this is, we've talked about the element of deceased rodents due to poison being affecting other animals that attempt to eat, the deceased rodent. And so we had an email from Vi Paddock about a scenario where she noticed one on the road. She reached out to our health agent. It got relayed to our DPW, and it was picked up, shortly after that. So we wanted to reiterate the importance of doing that. This is for public property. You really, if you see any dead animals on public property, please report it to the town. You can either call the town hall, the DPW line, and we'll get to it, or email us, and we'll get to it as soon as possible. If you have deceased animals on your own property, you want to make sure you're wearing gloves, and you want to put those in a plastic bag, and you can put them in the trash. So just wanted to reiterate the importance of that. Update on our Wood Road pump station project. All the exterior walls have been poured, and they're now working on pouring the interior walls. Starting next week, the pump station is going to go to bypass so that we can drain the wet well and be able to start doing the work down in the wet well and the dry well. So that bypass will likely be running for about 3 months. So the noise will be a little bit louder down there for the next 3 months, but it's a necessity in order for us to do the next step of the project. We also, if you've noticed around town, part of the II work that we've been doing to our sewer infrastructure was previously we had been lining our sewer lines. Now we're doing watertight manhole covers. So you might have seen this around town. What we're doing is trying to keep the sewer system as watertight as possible so that we can reduce the amount of inflow and infiltration of stormwater into the sewer system, which then unnecessarily needs to be, gets treated by Lynn Water Sewer Treatment Plant. We pay for that treatment, but it's not necessary. It also adds wear and tear to the system. So part of the II project that is funded through SRF funding and is an element of our administrative consent order with DEP. We already talked about mosquitoes. That was the last thing I had on my list.
Tony,
Yes.
I'm gonna approach it again. Is there anything we can do with Emerald Road?
Yes, Zach and I have been in discussion with National Grid on doing, some temporary paving there on their trench work. Our goal is to repave from curb to curb and sidewalks and to reset the granite curbs on Emerald Road early next year. You want to give the trench work a winter season to fully settle. But our hope is to get at least a travel lane, paved before the winter season. And we're working with National Grid on getting that scheduled or getting funding for us to get it scheduled.
Well, the way it is now, you're likely to lose a couple of teeth or a couple of wheels. That's terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. They came out and took a look at it. They admit that it's in really rough shape, and so they are just working through their process to figure out what whether they're going to come in and pave it or whether they're going to give us the funding to pave it. So we're hoping to get that done soon, prior to the winter.
Yeah,
At least a travel lane.
We got to push them on that.
We are.
I really like the plan that we're going to see if we can't get the left side of Emerald paved. Obviously, you have a lot of cars parked on the right side, so opening up that lane, I think, will make a world of difference.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Tony?
Nope.
All right.
Just that we have executive session listed on the agenda after citizens forum, but we don't need to go into it. We put it on there just in case, but we don't have any need for it.
Not at all. We're fine.
All right, so we'll skip that to today. Citizens forum. If there's anyone on the line that would like to make a comment or ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself, state your name and address, and comment away. Alternatively, you could put something in the chat, which Tony has access to. All right, I don't see anyone unmuting or any hands up. Give it on once. Twice. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibbo, aye.
Josh Ever, aye. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.